what's that main problem you solve in the world? And that's a very hard question to answer, because who thinks that way? People don't think in the context, I solve a problem or a big problem for a grouping of people in the world. So we start with, what are all the problems you solve in the world? People tend to answer that question in the form of the payoff. What do I provide the world? And really the inverse of those things are the problems that you solve in the world. But you got to pick a lane. It is my uniqueness to be able to lift people up. And so I've never met an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, that has never been discouraged. Entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster ride. And it was just such a great opportunity for me to be able to co-brand my personal brand with my business brand. It's a very clear example of how to do that. And there wasn't one client that gave up. There wasn't one client that I allowed to sit there. I gave them permission. I'm like, you got 24 hours, and I'm checking back in with you tomorrow, and we're gonna pivot. We're gonna go down another lane. I became a widow at 40. I had 3 kids, 15, 12, and 7. He was diagnosed 3 days before my daughter's 4th birthday, and we were told he had 3 months. And then when he died, we were in the height of the recession. My firm was gone. I didn't have a job to go back to. He had very minimal life insurance, and I had to reinvent. But what carried me through that whole journey was finding gratitude. I actually kept a gratitude journal every single day. I didn't get out of bed. I wrote down 10 gratitudes. Now it's just automatic. Now it's like, look, I get a setback, a loss, a failure, a disappointment. I'm in the automatic mode of, okay, what did I learn? What did I get out of this? Why is this? It's not, why is this happening to me? What am I learning from this?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 8 of Take the Next Step. I am your host, Ryan Sterling. In this podcast, it is my job to interview someone who has taken on a personal growth journey. And throughout the interview, I dissect the journey one step at a time. Today, I could not be more excited to share my interview with Kristen Cullen. On a professional level, Kristen is a brand strategist at what I consider to be the #1 personal branding agency, Brand Builders Group. If you like my vibe, what I'm putting out there, all of the images, all of the graphics, my personal brand, well, it is 100% due to Kristen and her firm, Brand Builders Group. They are absolutely incredible. And in this episode, we talk a lot about having a personal brand. I am a huge advocate of having a personal brand, especially in this day of age where there's so much uncertainty around our jobs, so much uncertainty around the future. I think more than ever, you need a personal brand. So Kristen shares a lot of knowledge about personal branding, why it's so important, the process they go through at Brand Builders Group. But then we also we take a little shift and we talk about the importance of gratitude in all aspects of life. But in particular, when you are faced with life's unexpected headwinds. And then with that, we transition into Kristen's story of resiliency. And she really does lead us through a masterclass in what it means to be resilient and how to fight back in the face of tragedy, loss, and how to pick yourself back up and move forward. Kristen is an absolutely amazing person. She's become a close friend of mine, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend and personal brand strategist, Kristen Cullen. I hope you enjoy. I could not be more of an advocate for people to invest in their personal brand and to have a personal brand. And I don't care what it is, what field you're in, what you're doing, you need to have a personal brand in today's world to protect yourself.
I totally agree. I think what happened with COVID, people were home and they were forced to reflect. And in a time where so many people had so much uncertainty, losing jobs, no job security, furloughed, companies shutting down. We were incredibly blessed and fortunate that even though business slowed a bit, like everyone else, it opened up the door for more people having to really look at, what is my purpose? How am I giving back? Am I just collecting a paycheck? Am I in the automatic space, the comfort zone? So the people who wouldn't normally have time to work on personal branding were the people who had time to work on personal branding. As you know, it's a commitment of time and money. And the people that really stepped into exploring personal branding were the people, it wasn't so much about a budget for them as much as it was about time. And I was incredibly fortunate to meet amazing people through the major shutdown, and just now seeing months later people starting to bring things to the surface, like you yourself, you've recently launched, and there's a lot of really exciting things happen for you, and you did that in 9 months. That's pretty fast tracked. And but you also committed an enormous amount of your time. You were super focused, and that's really what it comes down to. There's this misinterpretation or fallacy of two things in personal branding. One, people think it's self-promotion, and it's not self-promotion whatsoever. It's actually, how can you clearly and effectively communicate to your identified audience how you can help them and serve them. It really comes from a place of service. So that's the first part. The second part is there's this utopian thought that, I'm going to build a brand in 30 to 60 days. And as you know, that's not happening.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it's measured, and it's linear, and one step relies on the one before it. And there's a reason for that. And firsthand. So being able to work with people. I mean, I personally have clients in 11 different countries. And so working with people want this everywhere. It's not specific to the United States or to North America. People want to make a difference. And I truly don't have a Monday morning. I love this work so much. I feel so called to it. I'm so fortunate to have people in my life like yourself. I mean, there's no two people the same. And that's really what personal branding is about. We call it the brand DNA helix, and it's just like your body's DNA. There's no other Ryan Sterling in the world, or Kristen Cullen, or whatever the case may be. And so for me to be able to have a hand in and witness people go from uncertainty and lack of clarity to total focus, a plan in place, and utter excitement, there's nothing better.
I 100% agree. So let's take it all the way back to just even defining, how do you guys define what a personal brand is?
Great question. So we start with a foundational 6 questions. And the very first one is reflecting on, what's that main problem you solve in the world? And that's a very hard question to answer, because who thinks that way? People don't think in the context, I solve a problem or a big problem for a grouping of people in the world. So we start with, what are all the problems you solve in the world? People tend to answer that question in the form of the payoff. What do I provide the world? And really the inverse of those things are the problems that you solve in the world. But you got to pick a lane. And I have my own personal brand, not because I was ever a client of our company, but when we were creating the program, before we even introduced it to the world, we did this work with each other so that we could have an intimate relationship with the journey that our clients go through. And I remember when we pinned yours, and it felt so good. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like, that's the one. So for me, the all-encompassing problem I solve in the world is discouragement. Yours is unrest. And it's so spot on for our identified audiences. My audience, my identified avatars, my ideal clients are entrepreneurs. I don't know an entrepreneur that hasn't been discouraged before.
Yeah, no doubt.
Especially the last 9 months. So my ability to co-brand my personal brand in the space of resiliency. So we do something called a brand positioning statement. That's where we get you down to those granular one-word answers. What's that all-encompassing problem you solve? What is your messaging to that identified audience? And what's your one-word uniqueness? So mine is discouragement. My message is don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on others. Don't give up on your goal, your journey. If you're faith-based, don't give up on God.
Mm-hmm.
And my one word uniqueness is resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is all founded on two things: my personal story and my professional journey. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 23. I'll be 50 this year. So for me, I've only ever known entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I have a firsthand experience with major wins and some losses and setbacks and failures. But using those failures and setbacks as a means to grow and as a means to learn and as a means to improve and get better is really a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything is rooted for me in gratitude, finding gratitude in the experience and the journey, so that I'm able to not only help myself, but help my clients move forward. It's really, really important. The other things that we look at are, what are the things you're passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
Not only the things that fill your cup and get you excited, but what are the things that tick you off that you want to be a stand for change for? And in today's culture, in today's world, as we know, there is a lot of that going on. So a lot of our clients will step into, that is an injustice, or that is a space that hasn't been served or tapped into yet that I want to serve. And so a lot of times personal brands are based on that.
Mm-hmm.
We look at things that, what do you recurrently research? What are the things that you're constantly looking at improving on? I've never met a successful person who doesn't continue to improve. That is the one ingredient that I see. They never stop. They never stop improving. They never stop for looking for ways to get better or get more informed. Then we look at, what do you have results in? And when we talk about results, it's not only in the space of your profession or your business, but you as a whole person. I mean, things like marriage, that's a result. Divorce is a result. Parenthood is a result, but also maybe your degrees. I have many clients who are not formally educated. So there's this conversation that goes on for them in the space of lack of self-worth because they don't have that formal education. Some of the biggest, most brightest billionaires in the world don't have a formal education. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So a big part of this journey, and you know this firsthand as well, is really having breakthroughs in spaces of that limiting, belief, those limiting beliefs and the negative self-talk. I don't care how successful you are. We all struggle with limiting self-talk and limiting beliefs and negativity that we have within ourselves. And part of this process is breaking through those areas. It's really, really important. And then the third part, or the last two parts of the 6 foundational questions, are what are the things that people are willing to buy from you, products and services? And then what business are you in and want to be in? It's important that people pick a lane. As much as we want to tell the world, hey, guess what? I do A through Z. What happens is you're diluted, right? And so you become unknown for a lot of different things. We say, hey, pick a lane, become really solid there, become really well known for that lane, that one thing, then expand from there. I use the analogy that personal branding visually is like you're the hub of a bicycle wheel. You're the nuts and bolts right in the middle. You hold it all together. And those spokes are extensions of you. So in your case, let's use you as an example. One of your spokes is wealth management. Another one of your spokes is financial wellness. Another one of your spokes is you're a podcast host. Another one of your spokes is you're an author and you're soon to be a TEDx speaker. These are all extensions of Ryan Sterling. If you were to take any of those away, the wheel is still going to turn. We're just taking a spoke away. And so what people need to remember is when you build a personal brand, it's a constant. It stays there with you forever, no matter what you do or touch in your life. And I
love
think
it.
People need to understand the value of that.
Yeah, I think you're 100% so spot on. So, you mentioned, and it makes sense that a lot of the people that you work with are entrepreneurs. And, I came to you, when I first reached out, I was, I think I was like 6 weeks or so into running this business. But so entrepreneurs make sense, but can you talk about some other people who aren't entrepreneurs that come to you?
So really the exception to the rule is a CEO. We typically, we brand people.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, we brand people, we don't brand businesses, we don't brand companies. We're not a marketing and PR company. However, we will work with a CEO on their personal brand so that they almost somewhat like become a celebrity in their own space,
Yeah.
where that they can influence the culture of their company. And
Mm-hmm.
so by them influencing their key people so that they understand the importance of personal branding, it's almost like wildfire, where that once a CEO becomes solid in their own personal brand, it becomes almost contagious, where that their key people, their team people, their leadership teams are like, yeah, I think I need a personal brand too. So let me give you a good example of this. I have a client out of Denver, and he is a broker at a real estate firm. Now, at the end of the day, all realtors are entrepreneurs, but when
Yep.
you're a broker, you're a business owner. If it's a corporate structure, that's a CEO. So why would a boutique real estate franchise of, let's say, 30 realtors want personal branding? Don't they all do the same thing? Yes, they all do transactional real estate work.
Mm-hmm.
However, they each have their own area of uniqueness. They each
Mm-hmm.
have their own problem that they solve. They each have their own messaging. And so when you have a grouping of people who are solid on their lane and their focus and their expertise, it only can improve the entire space, the entire office from a
Yep.
different level.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's interesting when you see, and these are big names, but, people like Ray Dalio, for example, he runs the largest hedge fund in the world, Bridgewater Associates. But, he's created an enormous personal brand now with his book Principles. He's all over LinkedIn now. I mean, I'm sure other social media platforms, but it's interesting where, Bridgewater was very well known in the investment space. Ray Dalio, again, in the investment space, was a popular guy. He was known in certain circles. You'd see him at Davos, et cetera. I've never been to Davos, but I've seen him on TV watching
Got it.
Davos.
Yeah.
But now he's a household name, and it's very much, Bridgewater Associates is very much a household name. Another one that's really interesting that comes to mind is when you think of Goldman Sachs
Mm-hmm.
and their CEO today, David Solomon. He's a DJ on the side, and his nickname's DJ Sol.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is, one of the most premier financial institutions in the world. And their CEO, for the first time really ever, there's a personal brand behind it.
Right, because typically it's a very conservative space and you're
Yep.
like within a certain box and you have to behave a certain way. And especially as an FA, we had this discussion early on. We work a lot in the financial space, but we've had to find loopholes because when you work for a big franchise or a big house, there's major control over what you
Huge.
can and cannot do and say. Gosh, many won't even let you use social media, including LinkedIn, to promote your
Yeah.
services.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we want you to build business. We want you to build a portfolio, but we're going to let you do it with your hands tied behind your back with a blindfold.
Totally.
Because they do that to prevent having to put out fires.
Yeah.
And so when you take the step like you did to break away and create your own space and and really transform what wealth management and financial wellness means, like you have, it's a whole different level of business and it's a whole
100%.
different level of living and experience. But it takes some courage and it takes
Yeah.
risk, as you know.
It's really funny you say that. So it's towards this must have been a year or so before I launched my own firm. It was really interesting. So was in a pitch for a piece of business. And it was one of these situations where, there were a couple other firms they were looking at, and they were very transparent about the process. So they gave us their pitch book. They gave the other firm our pitch book, and they're like, hey, this is what you're up against. And, we want you to make, commentary about what the other firms are saying. It was really interesting. It was basically narrowed down between us and this other firm. And it was amazing to see their presentation. I remember going through kind of our internal strategy session for what we're going to pitch. And it's funny just to watch how people were just getting so nuanced, picking it apart. And I looked at it, I said, guys, this is the exact same presentation.
Right.
It sounds the exact same. We started as internal family office. We have trusted relationships. We believe in integrity. We're rock solid. I mean, it was, and by the way, good pitch, both sides, but they were both exact. There was nothing different about it.
There was no uniqueness.
Nothing. So I went and said, I think we lean into this. And I think we basically in the pitch say, look, this presentation, the firm name's different. It's exactly the same. And more or less that, so whether you hire them or hire us, hire the people you want to work with, hire the people that you're going to like. And that's ultimately what they ended up doing. We ended up winning the business, but it was very much leaning into that. And it's just interesting. I can think of a couple other examples. I have a friend of mine who's in the, who's a corporate attorney. And it was interesting. So apparently, and I've never been in the corporate law world, but apparently, companies like IBM or Cisco or, you name it, they would have their law firms that they would just work with over the years consistently. And it was, the company to law firm. And as the law firm changed hands from, the partners retired and associates became partners, it was just a kind of inherited relationship.
It's legacy relationships.
Now that's changed. So apparently, and this is interesting now where you're seeing in today's world with someone like the CEO of Goldman Sachs, and I think it was very much true in the investment banking world too, that these relationships were just inherited through the decades. And it's interesting to see now some of these C-level executives taking on a personal brand, because I think part of it is there is just with technology, the commoditization of services. So whether you're at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or UBS, it all kind of feels the same. Whether you're at law firm A, B, or C, it all looks the same. So there needs to now be something that's a differentiating factor.
Absolutely. Yeah, the uniqueness is a big, big factor. And how do you connect?
Yeah.
Especially, when we're talking about money, and you and I talked about this, I use the analogy that when people are working with someone managing their money, it's no different than managing your health. It's a very intimate journey. There's a lot of trust. You're not going to put your health in the hands of someone just because they happen to live, be around the corner. But that has happened over the years. Like you're saying, there's like these legacy relationships. Like, why is that specialist recommended for that particular ailment or illness or disease? Well, because he just happens to be 2 floors up. No, that's not the reason. Like, what makes him the best?
Yeah.
And it's no different than in the space of money. And
Totally.
it's a very intimate journey.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, and I see this with a lot of people at larger firms, and I suspect that the trend of people going independent is going to increase because of this point. I think it's so smart that you guys talk about what problem you solve, because so again, working in a large firm, this hit me a couple of years ago where we were going into these pitches and we looked the same as everyone else. We wore the same suits. We went to the same schools. We said the same stuff. We're using the same data, and we're trying to figure out, okay, look at the bells and whistles. Look at this. Look at this. Look at why we're better. And at the end of the day, I came to the realization where I'm like, people don't want to meet with a financial advisor. They really don't. They don't want to hire a new advisor. They don't want to go through the process. It's kind of a pain. They're doing it because there's some sort of pain that they're experiencing. There's some sort of uncertainty. There's some sort of unrest in their life. And just thinking about a doctor, for example, I don't like going to the doctor, but I will when I'm in pain, when there's some unrest. So when we started working together, just approaching it from first, what problem do you solve in the world? That really sung to me, because I realized that the business that I would win when I was working in a larger firm consistently, it's when there was when there's something was broken and something needed to be fixed, and there was some sort of unrest. Because the reality of it,
rather than proactive, and that's same thing in the healthcare system.
100%. So okay. So entrepreneurs make sense. The C-level people make sense. But let's say, for example, so let's use the example of a law firm. And I pick on attorneys a lot. I'm sorry, but I'll use them in a good example here. So let's say I'm an associate at a law firm, a big law firm. I'm about to potentially make a partner, but I know that the inherited relationships over the years, that's changed. And now the companies, the IBMs of the world that we used to partner with for a long time, they're now bidding out against each other, and it's no longer a guarantee. What about that person who works for a large company, and again, they're not inheriting those relationships? Do you but still need some sort of uniqueness? Are you working with people along those lines?
Absolutely. Lawyers actually are natural personal brand. Realtors, lawyers, doctors, because you do business with people, not with the companies themselves. So look at anyone like that. It's a natural personal brand. I mean, I've been approached to come in and speak to a leadership team that is in the space of sales and manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, how do you see the value of personal branding? And they said, each one of our people on our sales team has a unique gift. They have a unique approach to selling what we sell. And we believe in the value of them honing in on their own personal brand to bring in business that they themselves can only bring in, not the entire team. So again, anyone who's in a position to work one-on-one with people, bring in business, whether it be sales, think about it. If a lawyer closes a deal or retains a client, that's a sale.
Mm-hmm.
If a realtor, of course, that's a sale. Doctors, look, you can have, when people are looking at options for their health. I mean, I don't know about you, but I interview at least 3 specialists to make sure whoever I choose is the best one. And that's a sale.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, again, we say people do business with people. So that's a natural personal brand. Dentists, doctors, who else? Let me think. Fitness. I mean, I have a ton. Probably majority of my clientele are health and wellness and fitness experts in one way, shape, or form, whether it be fitness, whether it be nutritionists, functional clinician, in areas of expertise like Ayurveda, complementary medicine, and then of course traditional healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Again, people do business with people.
Mm-hmm. No, so let's keep on that attorney example. Now, what if it's do you guys ever come across I'm an attorney, but I don't want to be an attorney and I want to do something else, and I've got a different message, I've got a different calling in life, but I don't know what it is, and I'm not known for that yet.
Yeah.
What do you say to that person?
Great question. So actually, someone comes to mind for me, an attorney out of Chicago. He's an older gentleman, incredibly successful, extremely large firm. They've got 6 locations around the country, and he's so well known for that one specialty that he does. And he's gotten to a point, it's not about money, it's not about success. He's like, look, I really like to write. I really like to do, he's telling me about all the things he likes to do, and he wants to be able to be that person that can be a cause for people going into their second chapter. And so we're looking at a transition plan where that he's not only known as this specialty attorney, but someone who is cultural and articulate and enjoys life fully and doesn't look at post-career as a means to the end, but just another beginning. And so he wants to be, so we work a lot with people through transition plans. Another great example of that are pro athletes.
100%.
Pro athletes have spent their entire life in discipline, committing themselves to becoming known for that particular thing. So let's use a NFL player, for example. Their entire world is about making the team, and then becoming known and and then getting those big contracts. And then they retire, whether it be an injury or they're getting old or they get cut, whatever the story is. But their identity is solely connected to being that NFL player. They're not known for anything else. Yeah. So we're really focused and committed to helping pro athletes transition from having their identity only connected to that to something else. What is their purpose? How can they influence the world? Because so many people, everybody has a story, right? We all have backstories. Some more multidimensional than others, to be diplomatic. I actually would say to me, I don't have an earth-shattering story. Kind of vanilla. I'm kind of boring. I wasn't abused. I was homeless. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that. The first hour of working with our clients, if you recall, is that I sit and I listen. Tell me your story. Tell me your journey, because the more you're willing to share about your life's journey, the better we can serve you, so that if I detect, or our team detects that you're resisting an exercise, for example, I am better equipped to help you break through in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been extremely fortunate that I do have clients that are just so incredibly transparent. They understand the value of it, but sometimes it takes time to build trust. As you know, it takes
Yeah.
time to build trust, but this journey is incredibly intimate. It's incredibly vulnerable, and it's really uniquely uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because, as you know, going into a 2-day deep dive, or if you do one of our 2-day events, it's like you got to get really comfortable realizing and embracing how incredibly awesome you are.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point. And I feel like I come across that a lot where people, again, say that like, look, I've had no traumatic experience. I'm not interesting. I haven't done anything that notable, but you probably have to somebody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How many people who have said to us, who wants to hear my story? And here's the reality. If even one person hears your story and it makes a difference for them,
Mm-hmm.
then you've made a difference, period.
100%.
You know,
100%.
our whole commitment when we started Brand Builders was, what is it that we really want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And what we really, really, really want to do, this is the honest to God truth. And when we started, it was just 8 of us. And when we started, it was, we want to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how do 8 people change the world? And I call it the exponential effect. It's through each client, one by one, getting clear on how they can serve their identified audience, where that they have, make an effect for change for the better for hundreds or thousands of people. But if you take 1,000 people changing 1,000 lives, that's the exponential effect.
It's so funny you say that. I'll just give you a real quick example. Look,
Sure.
I'm a financial advisor. I've been a financial advisor for over 15 years. The way I make my money is a wealth management practice, and I think I loved how you had the wheel where you're the hub of it, and then you have all the spokes.
Yeah.
Part of it, this is a personal growth podcast. So in a way, it's like, well, how is that on brand? But it's 100% on brand because it's so much about using money as a resource to live your best, most intentional life. And I'm telling these personal growth stories to show my audience that you don't necessarily need a lot of money to start your journey, right? Money can be in a resource, again, to live that best life of yours. I think this is a really interesting example, though, just, the connectivity that comes with this, and that I recently did an interview, I released an interview with a guest of mine who was serving a life sentence for murder. And it was in prison where he developed inner freedom. And he's was released. He's totally rehabilitated. He was a former gang member, which is why the murder occurred in the first place. And he's a business owner today. He just had an amazing book come out. And it was interesting though, because from that interview, one of my actual clients listened to it and said that her nephew works in prison reform in California. And I was able to connect her nephew with the guests on the podcast. And you just think about, through this medium, how 2 people now are going to be coordinating and collaborating on prison reform. It's amazing to think through again, this personal brand of again, I'm a wealth management coach, I'm a money wellness coach, and this very much leads into it. But again, it's from getting my brand down that I
That's
was
right.
able to do this.
Absolutely. And that's the key about personal branding that people need to understand. A big part of personal branding is connecting,
Mm-hmm.
building relationships. That's the foundational part. If you don't have that trust factor and the ability to embrace people where they're at, right? We talked about start from where you're at and going from there. How many times, just you and I in our business relationship, have we connected each other with people in our spaces because we believe in what each other does, and we just want to spread the wealth. And when I say wealth, I mean abundance, right? The whole picture. It's not just about money. Money is a result. Money can never be the focus. And your very unique approach to wealth management, it actually has nothing to do with money. And that's what I love about your brand, is that when you talk about being a wealth manager or financial advisor and you say, well, has nothing to do with money, and people are like, what are you talking about? That's what I love. That is your uniqueness. And it's no different in my space, in that helping people get clear on why them and why they matter. There's this whole internal conversation about I don't matter. And when you get comfortable being visible, the world opens up. People can't do business with you unless you're willing to be visible. Because if they don't know you, they can't do business with you. And when I talk about being visible, it's not about being, some inflated social media influencer. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about consistency. I'm talking about people getting to know you through different mediums, whether it be social media, whether it be through keynote speaking, whether it be guesting on podcasts or being a podcast host. People get to know you through these different mediums. It's really, really important, because if they don't, then you're not going to have a business, and you're not going to be able to help people change their lives, no matter what your uniqueness and approach is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in this business, and I had to have a visibility coach, because I myself was not visible. I was like, well, I work behind the scenes. I'm a strategist. I don't need to be visible. And I was challenged. I was told, he's like, look, it's no different for you than it is for our clients. Unless you're visible and people get to know you, they can't do business with you. And I will tell you, when I went through the coaching and I became visible, and as you know, I'm very consistent with my social media posts and things like that, my business increased 527% in 60 days.
It's amazing.
60 days.
I don't doubt. I mean, you're amazing on social media. I mean, number one, you post really good stuff, but the consistency at which you do it is it's really amazing.
I had to get over the mindset of, here was what was going on. The fear of people judging, the fear of people thinking, oh, here she is again. Oh, here, and really at the end of the day, my coach said to me, well, are you being self-promoting? And I'm like, well, no, I just want to let people know how I can help them. She said, well, that's what I'm getting from your communication. Yeah. And I had to let go. All that was fear. 99% of what stops us in anything that we do is fear. Yeah. But fear has how many different disguises?
100%. Really keep in the back of my mind, and that it might feel to you that like, oh, you're pushing this stuff out there and you're going to annoy people. And maybe you do.
But then you're not your audience. They're not your people. Totally. The people looking for you are going to find you because of your consistency and your ability.
Exactly.
If someone judges you, it's okay, because guess what? They're not your people.
Exactly.
And you've got to have a thicker skin. I think human nature is we want everyone to like us. And that's all well and fine, but we talk about being Twitter rich and money poor.
Yeah, I love that.
1 million followers and 10 of them are your clients, you're missing the mark.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not about a popularity contest. This is about connecting with the people who are looking for you, and they need you in order to get to where they want to be. One of the things we say a lot in our content is who you are today is best positioned to serve who you once were.
Wow. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And so, I mean, so many entrepreneurs and authors and content creators, they're basically making the content that's helping their former self.
Absolutely. And so really, what makes us unique as a company is in the personal branding space is we say, you could have up to 3 avatars, right? Where there's a common core, where most are like you have 1. And a lot of times, not all the times, but a lot of the time, one of those avatars, those ideal clients that we create together, is really just a version of who you used to be. And the reason why avatar building is so important is because you are writing, you are speaking, and you are connecting with one person. Exactly. It's not the masses. You need the listening audience, whether it be social media, in an audience, reading your book, you need them to feel like you get them. 100%. There needs to be a connection there. A lot of times we get caught up in looking good. And there's a fine line, right? We want to put our best selves out there in the best light, and we want to be relatable. What happens is a lot of times is people will put themselves in the space of perfection or looking good all the time. And what happens is people look at them this way and they're like, yeah, well, you know what, they were born that way, or they had the silver spoon, or their father was so-and-so. So they don't really get me. Where the reality is, one client comes to mind. He's incredibly successful. She is a functional clinician. She's an expert in hormonal imbalance. She is a intermittent fasting expert. In fact, she did a TEDx talk that is over 6.9 million views, right? Yeah. I worked with her and she's amazing. But she had come to a crossroads in her personal life where she'd fallen extremely ill and was in the hospital, and she actually almost died. Before that TEDx talk, she actually had to get on stage like literally a week after having, her drains removed from her abdomen. She got very, 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 very sick. And I said to her when she was in the hospital, share your journey. And she was like, oh, I'm really private. I'm like, share your journey. Trust me. You are going to connect with people. And she even said, like, her own inner circle, her own family was like, why are you putting this out there? But she said what had happened was the people who came, who messaged her and reached out to her while she was laying in her hospital bed were like, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I went through such and such. I had that. This happened to me. And it began a very different journey for her with such deep meaning. And when she reported that back to me, I was so pleased to hear that she understood the value of being real. And her content since has just been amazing, and her business is amazing, and she's changing lives.
Yeah. So walk me through, okay, so you get really clear on the problem you solve in the world, you get your uniqueness, you're in alignment with what you like to do, what you're good at doing, where the revenue stream is coming from, you're putting, again, all of that in alignment. Right. So then how does it actually then get out to the world? And what's the next step after that?
Great question. So once we get the foundational piece, right, that brand positioning statement, the one-word answers, and we identify who your audience is, right? We look at demographics, who's going to buy from you and work with you, statistical information, and then the psychographics, which is really, really important. It's the emotional side. It's the why. Why are they going to work with you? Why are they going to buy from you? One of the things that we do, which is daunting for many, and I know you know where I'm going, is we'll say, hey, what are the questions they have? The questions they have translate to the problems they need you to help them solve. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the questions. So what's stopping them from getting to where they want to be? And without you answering those questions for them, they can't get there. So in a very simplistic way, those questions, the answer to those questions fuel the content that they're looking for. So we have them write 52 questions.
52.
Why? 52 weeks in the year. Why? Because for every week, you want to have consistent information flowing to those people so that you can drive them to wanting to know more on how you can help them. Exactly. It's really that simple, and it works. It works.
Yeah. And then just the creating of the content. So if I'm somebody who, I'm not visible, and I'm a little insecure about being visible, and I don't think my message is that great, but I go through this, and I can speak from just personal experience going through this. I mean, you really feel energized and mission driven after it, but then you still have to have the discipline to execute on it.
Absolutely.
And it's really hard.
It is hard. It's really hard. And so here's what I say to those people, the people who are visibility resistant. When I started working with you, you were like, no social media. You're like, I don't really want to like social media.
I hated it.
Understood the need and the value for your personal brand and how you can really reach the people who need you. And, podcasting is the #1 medium for people where they're getting their information right now. People want instant communication. Yeah. They're working out, they're running, they're walking, and they're listening to podcasts rather than reading books. Not that books aren't being read or listened to, but podcasting has become the #1 learning medium. So helping our clients either position themselves as guests, like I am with you today, or learning how to be a podcast host in an effective way. They both have major, major value so that you can share in an established listening audience and build your following exponentially as well. So being very mindful on who you are allowing to interview, having you be interviewed on their podcast, really looking at who's they're following. Do we share a listening audience? Because if we do, this totally makes sense for us to collaborate. But, I'm not going to go sit on a mechanics podcast show because their listening audience and mine are not in
Yeah.
alignment with each other. It
Yeah.
makes no sense. So one of the things that we do is a yes and no list. And the reason why we do a yes and no list, it's about creating boundaries for your brand. It's about creating alignment for your brand. We always say to our clients, if you're saying yes to something that's not in alignment with your brand, you are simultaneously saying no to something that is. So being extremely mindful on how you connect with your audience is everything. One of the biggest mistakes people make in the startup mode is saying yes to every opportunity, thinking if they say yes, they'll get their name, their brand, and build their brand awareness quicker, get it out into the world. But if you're doing it consistently in the wrong spaces, you're going to confuse people.
100%. On that point, I actually literally yesterday said no to an opportunity that would have led to direct revenue easily. And it's just not in alignment. Again, it would have been money in the door, like fast and super easy. And it just wasn't in alignment. And part of it is, again, getting crystal clear on what that is and being convicted in it. Because once you do that, then you're not distracted. Because there's so many ways you can make money out there.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's one of those where you do get comfortable saying no. Well, one thing I want to transition here too. So, you're a senior member of Brand Builders Group. Are you able to talk about Brand Builders Group? We talked about how you guys help people, but just at a very high level, who is Brand Builders Group? How did you guys come together, and how have you guys grown so quickly?
Yeah, great question. Have never been asked that question. So Rory and AJ Vaden are co-founders. They're a husband and wife team. And they were co-founders of a large company in the past in their coaching space. They transitioned and left that company. And I actually worked with them previously. And after they left, I made the decision to also leave. And I was going to go back to just doing independent consulting, which is what I had done before I had met them. But I was really drawn to their mission-driven way of being. If anyone knows me, they know I'm an extremely loyal person. And so after I was in a transition stage, I contacted them and I just said, I don't know what you're doing. I don't even know what you have planned, but I would love to be a part of it. And there was still a space of not knowing. They were in the space of trying to really reflect on what they were going to do. And it really came down to, I don't know what it is, but I want to do it with you.
Yeah. Okay.
And it started from there. And then our team grew from there. And we really didn't even know what that next step was going to be. And we're very transparent about this. Lewis Howes, who is a global influencer, speaker, author.
Amazing person. Awesome
Yeah,
guy.
he's outstanding. He and Rory knew each other from the speaking circuit.
Okay.
And he actually contacted Rory and said, look, clearly I'm killing it, but I'm lacking clarity.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for ways to get really honed in and focused. So Lewis spent 2 days with Rory and AJ going through this process of getting clear on the foundation of your personal brand. And really that was the springboard for brand builders. And really under the grace of God, to be honest with you, Lewis's global reach is so massive. And that's how you and I met.
Yeah.
And he interviewed Rory on his podcast, School of Greatness, about his journey through the phase 1 process.
Yeah.
And from that one interview, our business was born.
Wow.
It was born.
So it's amazing. So I listened to that interview, and it was funny. I was on a run, and I think I was training for a marathon. I was on a run, and I'm listening to this interview, and I'm in the middle of the West Side Highway, and I'm just writing down notes, just rewinding it, listening to what Rory has to say, because it was a lot of what you said in the first part of this podcast. But he was making so much sense, again, about the problem you solve in this world, your uniqueness, etc. The funny thing about this, I don't know if I ever told you this, but so part of the interview, Lewis Howes was like, yeah, send me a direct message and, tell me what you thought, etc. So I don't do this. Like, I've never done this. I actually sent Lewis Howes a direct message
Mm-hmm.
and through LinkedIn. And I said, hey, I listened to this. Like, I'm super pumped up about it. I think I'm going to reach out. And he actually sent me a DM back the next day. And it was like, do it. Like, don't even think twice about it. And I literally just did it right then and there.
And I remember our call. I was in Chicago, and in fact, I was driving. Remember, I couldn't get a connection.
Yeah, that's right.
Video call.
Yeah.
And but it was clear that you and I connected on that call, and I knew that what you were looking for. And I get asked this all the time: have you ever told someone they're not a fit?
Mm-hmm.
When you do those calls, of course, you want to be able to bring business in, and 100% I have. Mm-hmm. If I don't feel like we can serve you and partner with you, I'm going to tell you we're not a fit for you. Because if I say, and again, this is that yes and no list, if I say yes to every opportunity just to collect revenue, then I'm doing a disservice to the client, and I'm doing a disservice to the reputation of our company.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense to do that. We do not brand businesses. I actually had someone who wanted to take over a European government. And I listened to him, and he was a lovely older man. And it was just so clear to me that he just needed someone to hear him. Mm-hmm. And so I listened. Honestly, we allot like an hour on those calls, and I listened to him for about 45 minutes. And I just said to him, look, I wish I could help you because I get how passionate you are. But we're just not in that business, and this is not something I can help you with. Yeah. And my heart, I'm very empathetic. A big part of what we do is we listen. Yeah. And it was just so clear to me this man just needs to be heard. Mm-hmm. But in those cases, I have to be clear and transparent to say, I'm very sorry, but I can't help you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. We've had a few people who are like, yeah, I get you don't brand businesses, but I'm still going to hire you anyways. And I'm going to disguise it like we're going to do a personal brand. You're really going to brand my business. And in those cases, I'm like, this is not happening.
I'm so glad you said that because it's so true. This is so different than branding a business. A business is a component to it, but your personal brand leads to the business.
That's right.
And it's hard. It's funny because it's a nuance that I don't think people really understand, but it is a big difference.
Well, think about when I said, hey, it's Ryan Sterling. And you said, well, what about,
Future You Wealth.
Future You Wealth. And you were a little resistant. I'm like, no, the website's going to be Ryan Sterling. And you're like, and I'm like, okay, I need you to trust. And like, we're going to, and now now you totally get it.
100%.
Early, because we get into a process and a phase of getting comfortable with what we know and what we've always done. And so I always have people say to me, when's the best time to do this work? Because I'm just kind of thinking about an idea. Or I've done all these things that aren't working and I have all these separate moving parts. And the answer is this: anytime is the right time. Yeah. You don't have to be a celebrity status like Lewis, but at the same time, it's okay to just be in the green space of like, I'm thinking about doing this. Yeah. Anywhere in between. But the more green you are, the easier the process is because you don't have to unlearn things that you are rooted and planted in. The number of times that I've had people, you're a great example, but you've also been incredibly coachable, thank God. But there have been times where, you were getting ready to launch your book in the spring. And I had said to you, hey, look, if you're going to do this work with us, I respectfully ask that you not launch your book.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do.
That's a big pill to swallow. Yeah. I've had people that were ready to launch podcasts a week after my initial call with them. I'm like, please don't launch your podcast. Mm-hmm. I've had 2 incidences where they did, and then they actually put the kibosh on their podcast, realizing, shoot, I was a little premature, or we totally changed their entire brand. Yeah. There are all different pieces of the puzzle. I use the analogy, 2 things I do. One is that my job as a strategist, my team's job as strategist is you're building a puzzle, and it's our job to identify the missing pieces of your puzzle. Some people come to us with a box with all the pieces.
Yeah.
Some people come to us with an almost complete puzzle. And it's like, okay, how can we help you create that clear overall picture? The other thing is people are so quick to do the website and to do social media and put their pictures out there and the content and have all these separate moving pieces. And they jump into putting the stuff out there without having the clarity component. And so I use also the analogy, you would never build a beach house on toothpicks because
Totally.
you would have no stability and foundation. Putting content out into the world, into the abyss, is like playing darts in the dark.
You're
right?
100%. Yep.
And so bringing people back to base is probably the biggest challenge we have when people are set in their ways. What about the people that are constantly going to these workshops, these masterminds? I've had people who've started with me who have invested, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars into building a brand and gotten nowhere.
Yeah.
And they actually come to me a little ticked off.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to untick them off and build their trust so that they understand, look, I can identify right here and now the missing pieces of your puzzle. And this is why that awesome content isn't connecting with the right people. But here's what we say. It's amazing content. Let's repurpose it.
Exactly. No doubt. No doubt.
You already had your book.
Mm-hmm.
You already had the content.
Mm-hmm.
What was beautiful about your situation is that we were able to take the components of your book and create an offering.
Exactly.
It's seamless. We are not about, hey, no, let's just do that all over again. We are all about repurposing content.
Yep.
That's why those 52 questions, we're not going to say to someone in 2021 and 2022, give us 52 more. That is repurposeful content.
Yep.
It's really important that people understand that.
Yeah. I think it's also really important for people to understand that, again, you guys, to the extent that someone allows themselves to go through the process, you get them crystal clear. But then once the vision is crystal clear, you have to execute on it still. Mm-hmm. And whether it's, again, taking content that you've already had and maybe, again, repurposing it, maybe changing a couple things. And sometimes it's just changing one or two things.
True. Very true.
That's all it takes. It's interesting. I talked about at the beginning of this, how important a personal brand is today. And, again, especially, these times that we're going through right now. So many people have lost their jobs. We're recording this at the end of September. I'm a long-term optimist. Sometimes I can be a short-term pessimist, but that's just because of the facts that are in front of us. And I do suspect that we're going to see a lot more people losing their jobs. And unfortunately, I think a lot more higher paid jobs. Mm-hmm. So I think it's one of those things where, COVID has been so disruptive, but at the same time, it's also provided so much opportunity to the extent people's eyes are open. And this is really interesting. So just a quick example, I think it's fascinating. There's this company that I know, and I'm gonna be very coy about it. This company I know, it is consistently rated as one of the top places to work in New York City. Consistently. And I've known people there, and I've been to the offices, and it totally is. Amazing place. You go there, it's open culture, it's a young vibe, there's beers in the fridge. You can tell it's a fun place. And, but you don't necessarily get paid a ton there, but, you're trading because it's a great ambiance, great lifestyle, owned by one person. Wow. who seemingly is a good person, and people really liked this guy a lot. He was about 10, 15 years older than the typical employee there. But again, people really like this guy a lot, and he's seen by all accounts like a really good guy. And I think he is a really good guy. When the lockdown first happened in middle of March, mm-hmm. within 10 days, 90% of the staff lost their job. 90%. And it's not because the owner is a bad guy. He did what he had to do. Right. But it's just one of those where I think about that example where I just know so many people where they're like, oh, it's such a great company. It's such a great culture. I love it. And they're giving it all for someone else's vision. And it's one of those where those stories are going to happen more and more. And you just have to be mindful of the fact that if you don't own part of the company, then it's you are susceptible to being surprised. And that's why I don't care who you are, what you're doing, you need to invest in a personal brand. People have to know you for something.
That's right. That's right. So they all bought into the vision of that company and the identity of that company, but they themselves had no identity. And really investing the time and money into yourself. Listen, I mean, I've had people who come to me with no job, no income, no savings, saying, but if I don't invest in myself, it's just gonna be on repeat. I'm just going to find
100%.
another job eventually. I'm going to be on repeat, and I don't want that life anymore. I don't want to be disposable anymore. And those people have taken the chance, made the risk. There is a component of risk. There's always a component of risk, especially in entrepreneurship. But at the end of the day, you control the reins. And so, like, for example, mid-March, COVID, global shutdown, and think about clients who their primary business model was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost 6 figures in a matter of 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, it was the second weekend of COVID. And I reached out to every one of my clients worldwide via text message. And I said, I'm lending myself for free this weekend for 1-hour calls to talk through anything you're going through, to see if I can help you pivot and redirect your mind so that you're not coming from a place of shutdown and fear and resignation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the number of people who had invested a lot of time and money in this personal branding journey, and they were like a month away from launch, and they're like, I'm done. I'm giving up. I should never have done this. That's where my personal brand stepped up. My ability to help pick people up off the ground is pretty superior. Not because I'm better than anyone. It's just that I have the ability. It is my uniqueness to be able to lift people up. And so I've never met an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, that has never been discouraged. Entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster ride. And it was just such a great opportunity for me to be able to co-brand my personal brand with my business brand. It's a very clear example of how to do that. And there wasn't one client that gave up. There wasn't one client that I allowed to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
I gave them permission. I'm like, you got 24 hours, and I'm checking back in with you tomorrow, and we're gonna pivot. We're gonna go down another lane. So there was a lot of transformation. I think what's happening with this pandemic is companies as a whole are understanding there's a way better way to be efficient. And so how many big companies like Twitter, for example, aren't going back to the office? They're getting more out of their people working from home.
Yeah.
Now, that lack of socialization, I think, is a major problem. I mean, look at our students, especially the younger kids. They're really struggling with this homeschooling stuff. That's a problem. That we're inventing and creating new ways to be able to function as a world in a different way.
100%.
And I think that's the blessing.
Yeah.
We were always on Zoom. We always had live programs, as you know. We never canceled an event. We just pivoted from a studio environment to a real-time virtual environment. We've always been able to serve our clients. The feedback we got from transitioning from a live event in Nashville to Zoom was overwhelmingly positive. Do people look forward to hanging out in Nashville and doing some FaceTime together? Of course we do.
Yep.
But what we decided moving forward as a company is when the world does open back up, we're going to offer 50% in Nashville and 50% online.
Yeah.
Because that's what our clients want. And we're here to serve up to them what they ask for. You've experienced the environment, you know how great it is, and the ability to be able to connect with more people is key.
Yep.
When we started our one-on-ones that you and I did virtually, those were never virtual. In fact, I had a client out of Australia. She really wanted to do a one-on-one. It was like cost prohibitive to fly in. And literally on the fly, because we were in the early stages of our company and it was small, I texted my partners and I just said, I want to do a 2-day virtual. And Rory said, well, we don't offer that. And I said, it's just a different medium. And he said, you can do it. I said, why can't we do it? And we did. They gave new pricing. That was the beautiful thing of being boutique. And thank God, because that was well established way before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was just business as usual for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you go and, because you have you have firsthand experience of resiliency and being resilient
Mm-hmm.
and being discouraged. Are you able to kind of just pivot right now, just for a little bit, just to talk about the
Yeah.
personal side that gives you such a unique perspective into what it means to pivot, what it means to have your life changed overnight, what it means to have to pick yourself up and reinvent yourself?
Yeah. I'm happy to share my personal story. So in building my personal brand, I had to reflect on my life's journey. And, I tell my clients all the time, think about the things that people come to you for organically and recurringly. What are the things that your family and your friends and your clients come to you for, in the sense of where you're helping them in this space? And recurringly, people have come to me over the years for moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is I've experienced an enormous amount of loss in cancer. I've lost 8 people in 12 years to cancer. My husband, my father, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law, my other brother-in-law, and none of them familial related,
Yeah.
which is so interesting. And I would have to say, obviously, the biggest life event for me as a young mother was obviously going through the cancer journey with my husband and then eventually losing him. I became a widow at 40. I had 3 kids, 15, 12, and 7. He was diagnosed 3 days before my daughter's 4th birthday. And we were told he had 3 months. And I was like, yep, that's not happening. And so we decided to play roles in the cancer journey. And I said, look, you have one job, focus on cancer free. And my job is I'm going to be your caregiver and I'm going to be your advocate. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to find the best of the best for you. I don't care where it is in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to be alone. And so we did such a great job playing those roles. And we interviewed 5 specialists in that area. He had colon cancer, no family history, no symptoms. And he was 4th stage. Healthy guy. And his case made no sense. Like it was a scientific, conundrum. It was like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And after 44 rounds of chemo, a colon resection where they took a foot of his colon out and reconnected it, and 7 liver procedures where the parts of his liver were taken out, ablated, all these different procedures, a clinical trial, and 2 radiation treatments. He eventually succumbed. His body gave out. During that journey, we kind of looked at the 3% statistic. Well, someone has to be the 3%. Why not us? And really,
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of attitude.
Yeah.
And
But he made it 3 years from the initial diagnosis.
he made it 3 years and 3 months.
Wow.
With a full quality of life.
Yeah.
And what we learned along the way, and how to treat our bodies and using food as medicine, and how to reinforce the immune system. So I did a lot of research. I'm more of a right brain person. I'm a creative. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. Don't ask me about math. Don't ask me about science. However, it's amazing how the brain works when you are in the space of life or death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so somehow, some way, I was able to wrap my head around scientific reports and things like that. And I did a lot of research, and I found an immunotherapist. An immunotherapist is someone who uses your own body's immune system, your white blood cells, in how to treat illness. And I so, to this day, believe in this being the cure for cancer. So I basically stalked this gentleman, and I showed up at his office, introduced myself. I said, do you remember talking to me 2 years ago? And he said, yes. I said, well, we're running out of options. And I said, can you teach me in layman's terms what immunotherapy is so I can raise the money you need? So he did. He spent 4 hours with me. I did a PowerPoint. I put it out into every network I had. We raised $255,000 in 11 days. We were able to put together the protocol. We were able to get all 3 governing bodies to approve the protocol in record time. And I'll never forget, it was a Thursday morning in April of 2011. And he said, get him down here. We need to draw his blood to make sure he qualifies for the protocol. Because my goal was he was going to be the first recipient.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just too sick. And he never, ever was able to be the first recipient. So it was interesting. About a month after he passed away, the cancer center called me and said, well, we're going to have to give back all the donations. And I said, please do not do that. I was able to sit with the first recipient August of 11, and in July of 15, she was there cancer free. There was this big
Oh my.
Yeah. And then in October of 15, it became FDA approved as an option of care.
Mm-hmm.
And then in April of 16, I was in Texas, and I noticed I was at this Magnolia, and the people that do rehab or Fixer Upper on television.
Oh yeah.
And so I was there on business in Houston, and I went to Waco, where they have Magnolia. I wanted to check it out, and they had all these food trucks. And there was a woman behind me. Crazy story. Woman behind me, really well put together, and I could tell she had a port in her chest. So a port is what is put under your skin when you're a cancer patient, so that you don't constantly get poked. They'll run your chemo line through this puncturable membrane that's implanted underneath the skin. And you could tell. I mean, my husband had one; he hated it, and it's uncomfortable. It's weird. It's an foreign object in your body, but it goes through the main artery so that you don't go through the discomfort of constantly being poked. So I smile at her and I kind of make small talk. And she said, oh, are you from Texas? And I said, no, I'm from Michigan. And I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from St. Louis. And I said, oh, so you're, here from Magnolia. She goes, well, actually, I came to MD Anderson for cancer treatment. And I said, oh, yes, I see your report. I said, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of cancer do you have? And she said, colon cancer. I said, oh, and I said, how are your treatments going? I said, MD Anderson's one of the premier cancer centers in the country, and if not in the world. She said, well, I'm doing this new thing called immunotherapy. And I said, oh, that's amazing. And so she goes on to explain to me what immunotherapy is. And I smile at her and I said, that's amazing. I'm so happy to meet you. And how are you doing? And she goes, actually, I feel pretty good. And she goes, in fact, the program I'm in started in Detroit.
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And I kind of welled up and I said, I know. And she said, how do you know? And so then I told her the story, and she started to cry, and she hugged me, and her husband came from the washroom, and he's kind of like, do you know this woman? And so she says to her husband, you're not going to believe who this woman is. And so we kind of explained to him, and he hugs me, he's crying. And that for me was such a defining moment, that at a very big loss and a very, very bittersweet accomplishment, that moment for me, aside from being a mother of 3 amazing human beings, the things that I've accomplished in my life, that was a defining moment of this is working and it's going to save lives. And his willingness to be the first recipient, basically the guinea pig. But it was really because of our commitment and love and living out our vows, right? Till death do us part, no matter what. So I was enormously proud of that accomplishment, not me as an individual, but that journey, that if the death had to happen, it didn't happen in vain, that we never would have ever had any involvement in immunotherapy had he not had that cancer, had we not run out of options, had we not experienced what we had experienced. So I think my ability to always find gratitude, that, and I spoke about that earlier, when I became a young caregiver in the cancer space, I literally, I was raised Catholic, but I'm not a big practicing Catholic, but I'm very spiritual. And I remember distinctly early on just saying, please God, give me strength. And I was trying to find a way to find strength where that I could be everything to the kids and everything to him and everything to my real estate business. I was in commercial real estate development at the time. I'd left the firm. And then when he died, we were in the height of the recession. My firm was gone. I didn't have a job to go back to. He had very minimal life insurance. And I had to reinvent. But what carried me through that whole journey was finding gratitude. I actually kept a gratitude journal every single day. I didn't get out of bed. I wrote down 10 gratitudes. Now it's just automatic. Now it's like, look, I get a setback, a loss, a failure, a disappointment. I'm in the automatic mode of, okay, what did I learn? What did I get out of this? Why is this? It's not why is this happening to me? What am I learning from this?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people come in and out of our lives for a reason, for a purpose, no matter how long or short. And that has carried me through. And it's really fueled my ability to support others, to be a better mother, to be a really good strategist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's no regret. There are people that I've met in my lifetime that I would never know had I not had losses to cancer.
Yeah.
You know?
When you go back to that time though, so I mean, I'm just thinking, you're now a widow to 3 young kids. It's in the height of the recession.
Mm-hmm.
The company goes under. What are you grateful for?
Yeah, right. And your best friend's gone. Oh, and by the way, lost his income too.
Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
wake up, what are you grateful for that
yeah.
morning?
So, I have to say, I never had a moment where I rolled up in a ball and didn't get out of bed. I certainly have grief, right? Grief is a part of the rest of my life. You don't get over it.
Yeah.
It just becomes part of your new normal. Um, I've always been able to say to myself, it's going to be okay. This is temporary. It's going to be okay. And believe it, and
Mm-hmm.
believe it. Sometimes it took a little longer than others, but at that moment, I think the blessing was that I had these 3 young people relying on me. I
Yeah.
think my journey would have been very different had I not had those kids,
Yeah.
because I had to do it
Had
for
to.
them, right? And so for me, it was, how could I be the best mother I could be? How can I support them and have them feel loved? 3 very different ages, 3 very different journeys through grief. And here's, I'm going to be very transparent and honest. I failed miserably. I had set myself up for failure so badly that it took me a good 7 years
Why do you
to,
say that?
well, because I said to my children, he's not going to be here, but nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changed.
Yeah,
Are
totally.
you kidding? They were in private education.
Yeah.
I had a home on a lake. Everything changed. I didn't have a job. I was living on widow benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was insane. Why in the world would I have said such a thing? My intention was, you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. But I should never have set a false expectation like I did. Here's what I'll say. While those 7 years, because it's been 9.5 now, while those 7 years were incredibly difficult, and I carried an enormous amount of shame with me. Shame is incredibly destructive. It attacks every piece of your being, and to a point where you just lose faith in yourself. And I realize along the way that if I don't take this opportunity to show my kids, you can get back up, you can reinvent, even after you make mistakes, even after you make poor choices, even after you've lost everything and then some. Even then, even though we've had to give up so many things, at the end of the day, we still have our health, we still have each other, and we still love each other no matter what. No matter what is our motto in our family, no matter what. And each of the kids had their own struggles in different times in different ways. But in fact, my 16-year-old said to me, my daughter, the kids are 24, 22, and 16 now. And my 16-year-old said to me about 2 weeks ago, we were driving, and she said, I don't know if I've told you lately, but I am so proud of you.
Wow.
And as a parent, I don't think there's anything better, because the only people who can ever judge you as a parent are those children. And to hear those words from your 16-year-old who looks at you as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
And she said, Mom, I know because of where you've come from and what you've been through and what you've done and where we are now, I know I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like, this was all for something.
Mm-hmm.
There's no regrets, Brian. You can never live life with a regret. You can never regret relationships. You can never regret choices you've made, because as long as you use them constructively,
That's
and not repeat poor patterns and not repeat the mistakes and learn from them. It's such a growth and learning experience. And I'm grateful for all of it. I really
mm-hmm,
am. We are so conditioned to be in a perfectionistic environment and
mm-hmm.
world. There is no such thing. So when you create an unrealistic expectation of yourself or of others, you are going to get disappointed. We are all flawed, but it is our flaws that make us as unique as we are. And it's funny, and Aiden, my oldest, he's 24, he brings this up. I had a conversation with him probably very soon after his dad passed, and he had written a letter about me that was given to me when he played football. The kids had to write letters to their parents. And he said, you know, Mom, you always said you never want life to be a flat line. It means you're dead. Right?
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
want the flat line. And it's like, this is life.
Yeah.
And just learning how to ride the waves. And I found that letter not too long ago. And I read it and I started to cry because it was like, for this teenage boy to really resonate with that flat line analogy. And you hear quotes all the time, but we can't have breakthroughs or comebacks unless we have those breakdowns or those setbacks. I know it sounds very cliche,
Totally.
but it's true. And it's like there's that yin and yang, right? The darkness and the light. I mean, it's like, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that I've experienced, no matter how painful. And this is my journey, and this is my story, and this was what God put out in front of me. And I'm 5'2", I'm little, I'm pretty tough, and I own resiliency in a big way, because I know that it helps others.
What was the point? You talk about, this was 10 years in the making, but you said 7 years. It was really difficult 7 years.
Yeah.
Was there a turning point where it was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
through it?
It was October of 2017. I remember the date.
Wow.
I went to a non-denominational church here locally. I'd never been. I'd always wanted to go because I was always in a Catholic space. And the minister was on stage and he was talking about shame. So they always do themes.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular series was on abolishing shame. No coincidence, right? I'm sitting in the auditorium of 1,000 people. And of course, he's talking directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was brought to tears. And I was like, this is what's stopping me. My shame that I created, the story I created in my head about how ashamed I was for not killing it, for not bringing it, for not, I was barely surviving. I wasn't living my potential by any means. I was just getting through the days any way that I could. And I just made a choice. I made a decision. I walked out of there. I was in absolute tears. I was forever changed. I sat down and I wrote out my next 10 years. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm committed to. This is who I'm going to surround myself with. And this is what I'm going to do. And I wasn't clear on the path, but I was clear on what it was I wanted to do. And what I knew I wanted to do was serve people at a higher level in a way that was going to help them rise as well. But again, I didn't have the tools. I just had the framework. So for me, it was like, I was committed to serving the world in a way that they could rise above the ashes, whatever that looked like. And things started aligning. I ended up meeting AJ 2 weeks later.
Wow.
She reached out to me on LinkedIn. And
what were you doing at the time?
I was consulting. When my husband passed away, all I did was I worked on my own. I identified, a lot of people were taking buyouts in the automotive industry because I live in the Detroit metro area.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, gosh, I love the startup space. Why don't I just offer consulting services to these executives who've never been an entrepreneur, had no clue what they were doing. And I was going to work with them on their branding and marketing. Really, I was doing personal branding, but we
Yeah.
called it that back then. And
How do you know how to do that though from your training?
background was marketing,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I'd written commercials, and I'm very creative, and I'm a writer. And even though I had a real estate background, my core, my background was marketing and PR and branding. And when I went to university, I studied that as well. And it was kind of like I created as I went. And I was good at it, and I had really wonderful clients. And then I spent a lot of time consulting in the healthcare space because of my journey through cancer as well, working with doctors and transitioning, like how do you connect with patients? How do you have better bedside manner? So I was kind of dabbling in all of that. And I had posted something on LinkedIn, and AJ saw it, and she had her assistant reach out to me and set up a conversation. We ended up on the phone for almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And we just connected. And it was clear
Wow.
to AJ and I that there was something about our connection. She invited me to consider working with the previous firm. I went through a hiring process. I was hired as a consultant because I said, look, I've never worked for anyone.
Yeah.
I've never worked for somebody else. So I was the first hire as a consultant outside the company, and then kind of worked with them, like I said, for a short period of time until, they left, and then I eventually left. And then, we started Brand Builders. But that was I remember it was a defining moment when I heard Danny talk about living in a space of shame and how destructive it was, and how many thoughts do people have in a given day, and the percentage of negative thoughts that we carry about ourselves. There was a study done that it's like 85% of our thoughts every day are negative, and we don't even know.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, it was a defining moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had spent so much time hiding my reality so that I always looked good. And I made the decision there and then I was going to share my reality no matter what it looked like. And I cannot begin to tell you how freeing it was to be real.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly freeing. It's
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. When you don't live authentically and with integrity, you're lying.
Oh yeah.
And when you're lying, it's exhausting.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And the funny thing is, nobody really cares.
They really don't.
They don't.
It's all about, it's your ego. So
100%.
I let go of ego. I let go
100%.
of ego. And when I let go of ego, the world opened up in a way that had me align myself with amazing people. I have an amazing inner circle. I have a small circle by choice. And I think as you age, your circle gets smaller, and you get rid of the drama and the dead weight and stuff like that. But here's the other thing: learning that you can never do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You can never, ever, ever get to where you want to be by yourself. You
Totally agree.
have to align yourself with people. I've had coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I have amazing business partners. I have amazing clients. And I don't know anyone who is successful in this world that doesn't have a team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 100% true. And being okay just to not know.
That's right.
And to just let yourself go through the process and
That's
listen.
correct.
100%. It's really interesting. I get the irony is starting my business. A big lesson has just been letting go and listening to people who are putting up a mirror to you. And it's amazing when you can do that. It's hard though.
It is hard because we are all egocentric beings, and we
No
always
doubt.
look good. And my ability, so like when my clients are struggling or they feel like they failed or they're ashamed because they made a mistake or whatever, I'll be honest with them and I'll share a personal story with them. And they're like,
Yeah.
really? And I'm like, that happened. That happened. And it's like, but you know what? It happened because it needed to happen.
100. It's funny too. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and even so, it's not even just someone to putting up a mirror showing maybe your deficiencies or maybe what you're not seeing on the bad side. A lot of it's also on the good side too. I tell you, I'm giving a TED talk in 18 days.
I know, so excited.
No, and I can't believe it, but that's because of you. And honestly, it's one of those where I remember when I talked to you and you were like, yeah, you should do a TED talk. And how you mentioned I have 3 other clients who are doing TED talks, and like, yeah, you totally need to do one. And it just planted the seed.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't have done it before. You would have come up with it. Well, I mean, I'm not qualified to do it. I need a couple more years of running this business. I need a couple more keynotes. I need a couple. And so sometimes you just need someone to be that coach in your ear to say, do this, put yourself out there. I know you can do it. And I needed that. And you gave it to me. And it's amazing to see, people ask me now, they're like, how are you giving a TED talk? It's like, I applied.
Right.
And
and that's why I planted the seed, because the people I work with who I know would be amazing speakers. I saw it in you from the very beginning. What's great, because there's a lot of unknown. TED Talks do not hire professional speakers.
Yeah.
TED Talk doesn't go away. TED Talk
Yeah.
is there forever.
Yeah.
Great experience in learning how to write a keynote. It's great experience in presenting. It's great experience in the entire process. And so for me, it was like, look, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to deny you. You
Totally.
just reapply.
Yeah.
Just reapply and then reapply, and just learning the ability to go through that process. And by the way, rejection's okay.
100%. But it's interesting too, and you're talking about the circle. It's really interesting. I did the Brand Builders event with Rory. It was the first, I think it was one of the first virtual ones you guys did, the Keynote Craft. Yeah. And it's amazing that Erin, who's one of your clients, she's doing the same TED Talk as I am.
Exact same one. I
know.
Believe it. I'm so excited for you.
We were in that same group. And I bring that up because, again, it's one of those where the people you surround yourself with and the cohort that you put yourself in matters a lot.
Are you going to be physically presenting on stage there? Okay, so here's my request. I want you and Erin to get a picture together, please.
Okay, for sure.
And like tag BBG.
We'll definitely do it. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
She's outstanding.
Oh yeah, she's awesome. Well, it's funny. I mean, thinking of these, these COVID times and just the big disruption. I also think about people that I'm connected to now. Again, Erin's one of them. Where I've never met her face to face, but we're connected now, and we've been in just DMing back and forth, just talking about the TED Talk. I think about, it's funny, I think about you, in 2020, you've probably become like one of my top 10 most important people in my life. And I've actually never met you face to face.
Well, we were supposed to meet at that event in Nashville.
Yeah.
Then COVID hit, and we literally in 2.5 days, we converted a live production to a real-time virtual. We'll meet. We're going to meet.
Oh, no. Eventually. No doubt.
I'm so honored for you to say that. That really strikes my heart.
Oh, no, you are in the emergency call list at this point. So, Kristen, I cannot thank you enough for coming on this today. You've become one of the very most important people in my life at this point. You've helped me along this journey. I can tell you, people, I've been on social media, I've been visible now, and it's not uncommon that people say, oh man, like who did this for you? And I talk about you and Brand Builders all the time.
You did this for you. You did this for you.
Yeah, but you
made the investment of time and money. And I can't play favorites, right? But you've been one of my favorites because you've just been such a joy to work with, and you've been trusting. A big part of the personal branding journey is you got to trust the journey, and you got to trust who you partner with, because if you don't, you're always going to have roadblocks. And I just so appreciate you and your transparency and your willingness to do the work. You worked your tail off, and I am so proud of you. And I am so excited, over the next 2 months of your book coming out, the TED Talk coming out, and just launching your brand.
Well, I just got its first copy. Yeah. So it's 29th. It will be out by the time this is launched.
I knew you went.
Yeah, right. No, it's no, seriously, it's been a really amazing journey with you guys. And I'm proud to be a Brand Builders client. I'm proud to be your client. I'm proud to be your friend. And I will say too that I know the hand you were dealt. I didn't know the extent of it. It's the first time hearing a lot of these things that you talked about today. And I am just in awe of who you are as a person, where you've come from, where you are now. It's super inspiring. And, you're an amazing person. So I want to thank you for
Thanks for
coming on, sharing your story.
my heart.
And I hope this isn't the last time we
That.
talk. So yeah.
No, never. So I
So
appreciate you having me. It's been such a pleasure. And any way that I
if
can assistance, or if anyone wants to get a hold of me or is interested in learning more about brand builders, really the best way to reach out to me is freebrandcall.com/KC. That is a direct link to me. And if anyone, of course, DMs you or texts you or email you, you know how to introduce them to me personally and directly. But that's really
freebrandcall.com
/KC.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes. And then you make a really good point. So if you're digging on this, if you feel like you need to set up a meeting, and like you should set up, if you're thinking about it, do it. I'm telling you, just set up a meeting. You can also reach out to me and I can connect you to Kristen.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Kristen, you're awesome. Thank you so much. All right. What do you guys think? Kristen is absolutely amazing, isn't she? I mean, number one, she knows her stuff with personal branding. And trust me, I know firsthand from experience. There is no way I would be where I am today without Kristen's help, as well as the help of brand builders in general. And if you want to talk to Kristen, if you can schedule a free call with Kristen, just go and type in freebrandcall.com/KC. That is freebrandcall.com/KC. Third time, freebrandcall.com/KC. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes, and you can schedule your very own call with Kristen Cullen to explore how you might be able to utilize your personal brand in the fullest extent possible. I really do appreciate Kristen coming on this show today, talking about personal branding, but also talking about her story. I know when I think about when I'm having a difficult day, when again, it seems like there's nothing but headwinds in front of me, I think about Kristen and her story, and she really inspires me. And I could not thank her enough for coming on today and telling her story. A lot of this I heard for the very first time, and I am in awe of her toughness and resiliency. And again, I could not be more grateful and thankful for her to come on and share that with us. So with that, again, I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. And if you are enjoying what we're putting out there, make sure to leave us a review. Give us a rating, give us a review on iTunes. It really does help us with the rankings. So anyway, with that, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good week.